Hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Krista Shirley, and today we're going to talk a little bit about my personal story. I get a lot of questions from people from all over the world wanting to know, how did I get involved in yoga? How did I get started in a healthier journey in life? So I'd love to begin kind of at the beginning of my experience with Ashtanga, but even a little bit before then. I came to yoga pretty broken. I was somebody who was not flexible when I got to this practice, and I really wasn't very strong either. Before I found yoga, I was struggling with an eating disorder. I was anorexic, but I was actually deemed bulimirexic because I would purge through exercise. So a typical day for me before yoga came into my life would be counting my calories down to gum and spending 2.5 or 3.5 hours in the gym at the end of the day, just working through emotional stuff. And all these years later, and a lot of personal development on my part, I do understand eating disorders of any kind do stem from this need to control. And there was no control of my life in many aspects. So subconsciously, I ended up finding exercise. And when I found exercise, I took it to an extreme place. And I had found healthy eating that I also took to an extreme place. And I did that, ultimately as a byproduct of a very challenging childhood that I could get into much later if there's an interest for my subscribers to know more about that part of my life. But really and truly, I dealt with some of my eating issues in healthier ways. I was actually admitted to the Renfrew Center, which is located in Boca Raton, Florida. It was one of my first real trips to Florida. And I spent a lot of time there, and I gained a lot of weight there. And when they discharged me from the hospital, I think I was 15, maybe 16 years old. And I was healthy enough to not concern too many people anymore, but mentally I wasn't any different. I really just continued to follow the mechanisms and patterns psychologically, but I was doing it within a different framework, if that makes any sense. And I wanted to share that with you because it really wasn't until I found Ashtanga Yoga that I eventually healed in a very, very well-rounded way. The time from when I left the hospital to finding yoga was a couple of years span, and in that interim, I was still a gym rat, and I'd still control food, but I would do it in a somewhat healthier fashion. Fast forward, I went to college. I graduated from high school, and I ended up coming to Florida to go to Rollins College, and maintained my my lifestyle. I worked out a lot, and then I ended up going to a yoga class, this hatha yoga class at this gym, World Gym, that I was working out at my freshman year, and it was a very slow-paced, honestly, extremely boring, incredibly boring class for me. And I thought that was what yoga was. So I just discarded yoga as not my thing. Then a few months later, I ended up going to Greece for a semester to study abroad. And that was my very first trip out of the country, and it started this travel bug that is just never ending for me, which is awesome. But when I came back to America and came back to Orlando, I felt as though everything about who I was had changed, but nothing around me had changed. And it was this very, very uncomfortable space for me. And I actually noticed myself, because of this discomfort, almost falling back into some unhealthy mechanisms with food and exercise. And then one day I went to the gym to work out and planned on doing my usual thing, and I noticed above the water fountain this description for a yoga class, and I read it because it sounded so different from the yoga class that I experienced a year or two before. And it talked about how you bring a towel because you're going to sweat. It's fast-paced, vigorous movements, dynamic movements, and so I was intrigued. I was intrigued enough to try it, and that was actually my very first introduction to Ashtanga Yoga. It was basically a modified Ashtanga Yoga class. The teacher kept to word of the description. It was very fast-paced, it was very physically challenging, but I was also really intrigued by the fact that she was using a lot of Sanskrit words in the class, and I just loved everything about it. It was really challenging for me. Like I said, I wasn't super flexible or really strong, and so there were so many movements that were either hard because I couldn't get flexible and I wasn't flexible enough to do them, or they were hard because I wasn't strong enough to hold them. And I was immediately very interested in learning more. I could spend days talking to you about all the reasons why I love this practice and all the ways that it challenges me and it pushes me and it changes me and it awakens me and my soul and my spirit. But I will say, almost 16 years later, I think the greatest gift this practice has given me is the ability to learn how to love myself. I can only speak for myself, but I know that growing up in an environment that I didn't learn what it meant to love myself. I didn't really even think I know really a lot about what love was. And day after day, week after week, year after year, you know, some days I really hated myself and I could see that reflection of myself in my practice, and some days I thought I was okay. But after a lot of chipping away and a lot of digging deep and wanting to run away and wanting to quit, I remember one day waking up and realizing that I had stripped away so many layers of environmental factors or societal factors or internal factors, and what I was left with was love for myself and greater love for others, and this like endless capacity, this deep well that had been literally so hidden and buried because of all of these beliefs and thoughts and things that either didn't belong to me or didn't serve me anymore. And through daily practice, it's like subconsciously and consciously working through those to being left with this beautiful me. And I won't lie and say that every day I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love myself. But I wake up every day with more respect for myself and more compassion for myself and more belief in myself. And I wash, rinse, repeat, because if I didn't practice every day, then over time that could fall away. But when I get back to my mat and I work with my breath and I move my body and I focus my mind, then I finish the practice. I've washed off the dirt inside my mind and my heart. And again, I'm back in this clean space of clarity and self-love. And so there are a billion reasons to get started with yoga. There are a billion reasons to stick with it. But the greatest reason that I do every day practice is because of the love that I've wanted to have for me and for others. Thank you so much for watching my video. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell so that you're notified each week when I post new videos on YouTube. And don't forget to like this video and click the link below to subscribe to my newsletter. Have a great day.